This video is lesson 15 of the Hands-on Equation Learning System, and in this lesson we're going to use a new convention for writing star in our equations. Previously we've seen equations that look like the one at the top of the screen, but what I want to show you in this lesson is that we can write this in a different way like this, and we can replace star with negative x, and that means exactly the same thing. So anywhere we see a star, if we put negative x, we're not changing the value of the equation. And the reason for that is star is just the opposite of x. So if we put negative x, that just means that we are taking the opposite of whatever the value of x is. So if you see an equation that is written like the one in red, anywhere you see negative x, that means that you're going to have a star, the opposite of x. So we would set this equation up by putting two x's, then a negative x or a star, then a 3, then two negative x's, which means two stars, a 10 and a 5 for 15. As we've done previously, when we have equations that have number cubes on both sides, we're going to simplify the number cubes first. So subtract 3 from both sides. 15 minus 3 is 12. And it looks like I can take a star away from both sides. I want to get these number cubes by themselves, so I need to remove this star, and I'm going to do that by adding a 0 pair to the opposite side, and then I can take away a star from both sides. I now have 3x equals 12, which makes x be 4, and that makes star be the opposite of 4, negative 4. We could also write that as negative x equals negative 4. I'm going to perform the check by setting this up in its original state. So we had 2x, a negative x or a star, and a 3. And then we had two negative x's, two stars, and then a 15. X had a value of 4, and star or negative x had a value of negative 4. On the left-hand side, we have 4 plus 4 is 8, minus 4 brings us back to 4, plus 3 is 7. On the right-hand side, we have 15 minus 4 is 11, minus 4 again is 7. Our check is 7 equals 7, which makes our equation true for x equals 4, and negative x or star equals negative 4. Let's look at another example where we don't even have star in the equation. So on this one, we have two x's, and then we're wanting to subtract a negative x. So we're wanting to take away a star. Well, I don't have a star to take away, so this goes back to the previous lesson where I need to add a 0 pair and then take away a negative x or take away a star. So now I'm taking away a star and adding a 4. On the other side, I want two negative x's, which means I want two stars, and then I want an x as well. To solve a problem like this, I want to get everything that is on the same side as the number cube removed. So I need to get rid of these three x's. Well, I can get rid of one right away because I've got an x on the other side of the equation. So I can remove one from each side. But now, in order to remove these two x's left over here, I'm going to have to add 0 pairs to the opposite side. So 2 0 pairs to the opposite side, and now I can match up x's from each side, one from this side, one from this side. So now I'm left with 4 stars or 4 negative x's equals 4. So 4 times 1 equals 4. So that makes star be equal to 1, or we could write that as negative x equals 1, and x would be the opposite, so x equals negative 1. You'll notice that we're now getting into equations that require you to apply everything you've learned in previous lessons, so they get quite a bit more complicated and they will take you a little bit more time, especially when you're doing the check, because now we're going to have to go back to our original form after we set everything up, and that actually required us to even add 0 pairs in the process of setting things up. So our equation was 2x's minus a negative x, which means we needed to take away a star, and we had added a 0 pair and then taken away a star. Then we added a 4. On the other side, we added 2 negative x's, or 2 stars, and an x. So this was our original setup. Now we're ready to substitute. Our x had a value of -1, and negative x, or star, is +1. On the left-hand side, we have 4 minus 1 is 3, 2, 1, so a total of 1. And on the right-hand side, we have 1 plus 1 is 2, minus 1 brings us back to 1. So our check does confirm that x equals -1 and negative x equals +1. Here's another example. You can pause the video and try this on your own, and then come back and check your solution. On the left-hand side, we want 2 of the negative x's, and then another negative x. On the right-hand side, we want a 10, and then a negative x. So we don't even have any x's in this equation. We're going to take a negative x away from both sides. We have 2 of the negative x's equals 10. So 2 times what is 10? 2 times 5 is 10. So negative x, or star, is equal to 5, which makes x equal to -5. Don't let the name negative x confuse you into thinking that somehow its value has to be negative. The negative x simply means that this variable is the opposite value of x. Performing our check, we'll go back to our original setup, and negative x had a value of 5. This is one fairly easy to check in your head. The left-hand side is 15, the right-hand side is 15, so we did do everything correct. And here's one last example. You can pause the video and try this on your own. On the left-hand side, we want 3 negative x's, and then we want to subtract a negative x, which means take away one of the negative x's, and then add a 5. On the right-hand side, we want an 8, and then we want to add a negative x. Now, I do want to point out that you'll notice that anytime we have negative x, we're putting that in parentheses, and the reason we're putting that in parentheses is because that sign, that negative sign, is always next to either next to a number or it's next to an operation symbol. And the reason we put it in parentheses is just to make sure that it doesn't get us confused into thinking that that sign is an operation. Especially in this case right here, this means 3 of the negative x, and if we didn't put parentheses there, it would look like 3 minus x, which would be a completely different problem. When we're ready to solve this, we're going to take away the number cubes first, so subtract 5 from both sides. And then we can take a negative x away from both sides, a star away from both sides. And we're left with negative x equals 3, which means positive x equals -3. Go back to our original setup for the check. 3 negative x's, subtract a negative x, add a 5, and then an 8, and then add a negative x. Negative x had a value of 3. So the left-hand side is 5 plus 6, which is 11, and the right-hand side is 8 plus 3, which is 11. To recap, in this lesson, we introduced a new way of writing our equations where we replace star with negative x because x and star are opposites. X and negative x are opposites as well.